Ricky Nelson was a superstar. Teen idol. Singer. Actor. A household name in the 1950s and 60s. But here's what most people don't know: when he died in a plane crash at just 45 years old, he left behind something that would transform his entire family's wealth forever. Not just millions. We're talking about a fortune so enormous that decades later, his descendants are still living off the interest alone. And the strangest part? The money kept growing after he was gone, in ways that shocked even his closest family members. Ricky Nelson wasn't supposed to become famous. He was born Eric Hilliard Nelson on May 8, 1940, in New Jersey. His parents were already celebrities. His father was a bandleader, his mother an actress. But Ricky? He grew up on a radio show called The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, which started in 1944. At first, he was just a kid on his parents' show. Nobody expected him to become anything special. Then everything changed when he was a teenager. In 1957, at just 16 years old, Ricky recorded a song called I'm Walkin' with his father's band. The song exploded. It hit number 4 on the Billboard charts. Suddenly, teenage girls were screaming his name. Radio stations couldn't play his records fast enough. He wasn't just famous, he was a phenomenon. What made Ricky Nelson different from other teen idols was his authenticity. He actually played guitar. He actually sang live. He wasn't manufactured in a studio. His music had soul. Between 1957 and 1962, he released 19 top 40 hits. Songs like Travelin' Man, Hello Mary Lou, and Poor Little Fool became anthems of the era. He appeared on television constantly. He starred in movies. He was everywhere. But success at that level comes with a price. The money poured in: endorsement deals, concert fees, album royalties. By his 20s, Ricky Nelson was wealthier than most people could imagine. He owned property. He invested wisely. And most importantly, he understood something crucial that many young stars never learn: how to hold on to wealth. Yet even with all that money, Ricky Nelson remained restless. Success, it turned out, wasn't enough for him. What most people don't realize is that Ricky Nelson didn't just earn money from performing. He built an empire. Starting in the late 1950s, he began investing in real estate, stocks, and business ventures. While other young stars were spending their fortunes on cars and parties, Ricky was thinking long-term. He hired financial advisors. He diversified his investments. He played the game like a businessman, not just an entertainer. By the 1970s, Ricky Nelson's net worth was estimated at somewhere between $8 million and $12 million, which in today's money would be roughly $40 to $60 million. But here's where the story gets interesting. Much of that wealth wasn't in cash. It was locked into assets that would continue generating income for decades. Royalties from his old recordings. Real estate holdings. Stock portfolios. Investment trusts. The entertainment industry works differently than most people think. When you record a song, you don't just get paid once. Every time that song plays on the radio, gets streamed online, or appears in a film, you earn money. Ricky Nelson had recorded hundreds of songs over his career. Some of those songs were already considered classics by the 1970s. Travelin' Man alone had been played millions of times. Each play meant money. Money that never stopped coming. But nobody, not even his family, fully understood the scope of what he had built. The investments were spread across different accounts, different states, different asset classes. Some of it was tied up in trusts that wouldn't mature for years. Some of it was in properties that were appreciating in value. It was like a complex puzzle, and most of the pieces were hidden from view. Then came the night of December 31, 1985. A night that would change everything. December 31, 1985. New Year's Eve. Ricky Nelson was 45 years old, and he was trying to make a comeback. The 1980s hadn't been kind to him. Rock and roll had changed. The teen idol era was long gone. But Ricky refused to fade away. He was touring again, performing at small venues, trying to remind people who he was. That night, he was flying from a concert in Alabama to Dallas, Texas, on a Convair 440 twin-engine aircraft. It was a small plane, not a commercial jet, but the kind musicians often chartered for tours. The weather was clear. The flight was routine. Ricky was in good spirits. He had just performed a New Year's Eve show, and he was heading to another gig. He had no idea it would be his last flight. Somewhere over Mississippi, something went terribly wrong. The plane's engines caught fire. The pilots fought to control the aircraft, but the situation deteriorated rapidly. They attempted an emergency landing at a small airport, but the plane didn't make it. It crashed in a wooded area near DeKalb, Mississippi, bursting into flames on impact. All 14 people on board were killed instantly. Ricky Nelson was gone. The news shocked the nation. Newspapers ran his photo on their front pages. Television stations interrupted regular programming. He was the teen idol who had defined an era, and now he was dead. People mourned. His family grieved. But amid all the sadness, something unexpected began to happen. His death triggered a series of legal and financial events that nobody had anticipated. Probate processes began. Lawyers started sorting through his estate. Accountants tallied his assets. And slowly, piece by piece, the true size of his fortune began to emerge from the shadows. When Ricky Nelson's will was read and his estate was officially assessed, the numbers shocked everyone. His net worth at the time of death was valued at approximately $8.5 million, massive wealth for 1985. But that wasn't the most important part. What mattered was what he had structured his wealth to do after he was gone. Ricky had been smart. He had set up trusts. He had created inheritance structures designed to protect his money and distribute it strategically over time. His will named his two sons, Matthew and Gunnar, as the primary beneficiaries. But the money didn't go to them directly. It went into trusts. It was protected. It was managed. And most crucially, it was set to generate income for generations. The real goldmine, however, was his music catalog and his name rights. Every time one of his songs was played, on the radio, in a movie, in a commercial, on streaming services, money flowed to his estate. Travelin' Man alone has been streamed hundreds of millions of times since his death. That's hundreds of millions of plays, each one generating fractions of a penny that add up to enormous sums. And this wasn't a one-time payment. It was perpetual. As long as people listened to his music, money would keep coming. His image and likeness also had value. Merchandising deals. Licensing agreements. Retrospectives and documentaries about his life and career. All of these things generated income that was funneled into his estate and held in trust for his heirs. The machine didn't stop when Ricky died. If anything, his death made his music more valuable. Nostalgia is powerful. Deceased celebrities often see renewed interest in their work. What's more, the real estate holdings he owned continued to appreciate. Properties he had purchased decades earlier in California and other states were now worth exponentially more than what he had paid for them. Some of these properties were generating rental income as well. But the family's discovery of just how vast this fortune truly was, that came later, and it was staggering. Ricky Nelson's sons, Matthew and Gunnar Nelson, were teenagers when their father died. They were grieving, confused, and trying to understand a world without him. Their mother, Kristen Harmon Nelson, was managing the family and dealing with the emotional aftermath of losing her husband so suddenly and tragically. Nobody was thinking about money. Nobody was calculating net worth. They were just trying to survive the loss. But as the months passed and the legal machinery of probate began to work, the family's financial advisors and lawyers started presenting them with documents. Trust statements. Asset valuations. Income reports. And with each document, the picture became clearer. Ricky Nelson had left them far more than they realized. The trusts that Ricky had established weren't just sitting there. They were actively generating income. Royalties kept flowing in from his recordings. Licensing deals brought in money. His name and image were still valuable. Television networks wanted to air reruns of The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, the show that had made him famous as a child. Each airing meant payment to his estate. His old movies were being shown on cable channels. His concert footage was being compiled into documentaries. By the early 1990s, just a few years after his death, it became clear that Ricky Nelson's fortune wasn't diminishing, it was growing. The trusts were earning interest. The investments were appreciating. The royalties kept coming. Matthew and Gunnar Nelson, still in their 20s, were inheriting not just a fortune, but a financial machine that would support them for the rest of their lives. What shocked the family most was realizing how deliberately Ricky had planned all of this. He wasn't just a musician who happened to make good money. He was a visionary about his own legacy. He understood that his music would outlive him. He knew his name would still mean something decades after he was gone. And he had structured everything to take advantage of that reality. Yet there was something else the family discovered, something that revealed just how complicated their father's financial life truly was. Fast forward to today. Ricky Nelson has been dead for nearly 40 years. His sons, Matthew and Gunnar Nelson, are now in their 60s. They've built their own careers. They were musicians themselves, forming the band Nelson in the 1980s. They've had their own successes, their own struggles. But throughout it all, the money from their father's estate has never stopped flowing. The royalty streams from Ricky Nelson's music catalog are worth millions. Every streaming service, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, pays royalties when his songs are played. Travelin' Man alone generates tens of thousands of dollars per year in streaming revenue alone. Multiply that across his entire catalog of hundreds of songs, and you're looking at substantial annual income that requires zero effort to generate. It just arrives. His image has been licensed for use in documentaries, television specials, and retrospectives about 1950s and 60s pop culture. His likeness appears on merchandise, t-shirts, posters, vinyl records. Each licensing deal puts money into the trusts. The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet continues to air in syndication and on streaming platforms. Every broadcast generates payments. What's remarkable is that this wealth has compounded over decades. The interest earned on the principal has been reinvested. New investments have been made with the income generated from old investments. It's wealth creating more wealth, entirely on its own. The family didn't have to do anything except wait. But perhaps the most important legacy Ricky Nelson left behind wasn't just financial. It was educational. His careful planning, his diversification, his long-term thinking, these became a blueprint for how to build generational wealth in the entertainment industry. Financial advisors point to Ricky Nelson's estate as a masterclass in wealth preservation. He understood something that most young stars never grasp, that your greatest asset isn't your talent or your fame. It's your name, your work, and how you structure the rights to both. Today, Matthew and Gunnar Nelson represent something rare in American culture, second-generation wealth that was intentionally created and protected by someone who understood the impermanence of fame. They are living proof that sometimes the smartest thing a superstar can do is think beyond the spotlight and plan for a future they'll never see. The fortune Ricky Nelson left behind continues to grow, generation after generation. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story about how one man's foresight created a legacy that lasted decades, make sure you subscribe to this channel. The next story we're telling reveals something equally surprising about another celebrity whose careful planning changed their family's destiny forever. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.